Welcome to episode 17 of Two Dudes in a Movie. I am Luke Parrish.
I'm AJ Ferguson.
And I'm Paul Tabling.
All right. So let's get into what we've been watching this week, guys. What have you two been watching?
I know for me, we kept the Harry Potter marathon going strong. We watched movie number 5, and I just finished book 6. We'll watch movie 6 this week,
nice.
and then probably knock it all out next week and do 7 and 7. So movie 5 was probably my favorite movie so far in this series.
Order of the Phoenix.
Order of the Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
I like, honestly, I like it because the kids get older and the animation's better.
Yeah.
And I think they spent a little bit more money on that movie than they did the earlier one. So I like that movie. It's probably not the best in the series, but it's the best so far. I've only seen the movies once before, so I really don't have that good of a memory.
Yeah.
Then Callie and I are still watching The Goldbergs.
Yeah.
Great show. Super funny show. I've talked about it before. And then I'm watching Last Chance U. Almost done with season 4, which is the one that just came out. And if you guys haven't never watched Last Chance U and you're trying to get into football season kind of vibe, go give it a watch. It's really, really good. It's documentary style, but it doesn't have like the feel of like a traditional documentary. It's really, really well created. Like the way they've taken like the real footage and the interviews and stuff like that. They've done a really good job. So I love that show. It's been really enjoyable to watch.
No, Netflix does some great sports TV shows like that, and like Sunderland Till I Die is pretty awesome.
I like that one too.
How far are you into the Goldbergs?
Season 3?
How many seasons are there?
5 or 6, but there's another one coming out in September.
Yeah,
so
'cause it's still
I'm
on
not sure.
TV.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many more they're going to go.
Okay, I know they have that spin-off show with the oldest brother's girlfriend is like the main character or something. It's currently on. It just started like this year, I think.
I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, well,
It's a good show. It gets better pretty quickly. Like season 1 episode, like even the pilot's pretty good, but it gets better. Like obviously once you fall in love with the characters, they start growing on you a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure.
They start getting funnier. But it doesn't take as long to fall in love with the show as like Parks and Rec does, like or even The Office. Like season 1 of both of those shows just aren't very good. Goldberg starts off pretty strong. So, Paul, what you been watching?
So my wife and I finally finished Stranger Things 3.
Yeah.
Wow, what'd you think?
I thought it was interesting.
Did you agree with our assessment of
I
it
haven't
being
finished the episode yet.
okay?
So
basically,
I started it, but I haven't finished the.
our
podcast
agreement
yet.
was season 1 was the best, season 3 was next, and then season 2.
Yeah, season 2 kind of fell off for me. I didn't like the storyline where she went off like and found her like sister or whatever it was.
That was the worst episode of the series. Was that episode that you're talking about?
I think they're gonna bring that back in season 4. That's my theory.
Are they gonna do a season 4?
Season 4 is the last season. That's what I've heard. What's what I've read.
I hope it's the last season.
I kind of do too. I'm getting tired of it.
The brothers said that season 5 would be the absolute most they'd ever do, but they want to just do 4 and be done. So 8 to 10 more episodes and be done.
5 would be because like Netflix is in there like twisting their arms like
If
hardcore.
Netflix is going out of business 2 years from now, they need Stranger Things season 5. They might do it. But
did you guys
so
see,
did you agree season 3 was better than 2 and worse than 1, or what do you think?
I would say, yeah, I would probably agree with that because it was different. Like it wasn't the Halloween theme, but I would say my thing, like when we finished, I looked at my wife and I said, man, if they do another season, which they honestly set it up almost to where they could not, but I believe that you're right that they probably will.
Yeah, for sure.
But I looked at my wife and I was like, man, I'm really tired of this same monster.
Yeah.
I want it to be something different. Like if they do another season, I want it to be a different all-around game.
I don't know how far you got in our episode, but we talked about Brenner coming back in season 4.
Dr.
So
Brenner.
the American, it's in Russia.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks it's Hopper because the Russian like serial killer guy like always calls him the American. So that's why people think he's like Hopper's the one in jail.
Oh, okay.
So Luke's theory, or I guess it's not your theory, someone else.
It's some I heard it online and I agree with it.
He's the one who presented it, which I agree with, is that Brenner is the American in Russia, and he's going to be the whole like villain of season 4, and he's going to like try to create a new army with like all these other people. That's where number 8 from season 2 is going to come back around. At least that's my tie into that theory.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's interesting.
I'd love for it to be a twist, like because everyone's like, "Oh, it's Hopper. It's definitely Hopper."
I would love for it
Hopper's
to not be
actually
Hopper.
dead.
I hope Hopper's dead,
and it's Brenner in the cell.
I love Hopper's character, but I hope he's actually dead for the sake of the show.
Yeah,
It means
like I
so
love
much
how
more.
Like, I love how like Marvel actually killed like their main characters. I think
For sure, yeah.
at some point you have to have that,
Yeah.
especially in a TV show like Stranger Things that's so popular right now.
The dead
Right.
need to
If no
stay
one
dead.
actually dies, then like there's no real threat.
Yeah, there's no danger. Like,
Yeah.
if they're getting attacked, like, well, none of them are going to die anyways.
Which
so.
also, if Hopper is actually dead, that means, in my opinion, that I think Elle will die at the end of the last season, whatever that is, and that'll
Yeah.
be like the end of the show is whenever she dies, because she's like the spine of the show. But
I can see that.
I'd love for that to happen.
I think it'd be really cool for her to like save the world again and die,
Go out and
go out on a high.
glory.
Yeah, Iron
They
Man,
just all die.
Iron Man style. Anything else you've been
Everybody
watching,
dies.
Paul, besides Stranger Things?
So I'm just started the new season of Comedians in Cars.
Oh, nice with
yeah, fun show.
Seinfeld.
Yeah, I love that show. I'm really glad they're continuing to do it,
Mm-hmm.
even though I know that Jerry is like, I'm still gonna tour and everything, and this is just kind of like when I want to and have time. So it seems like it's been like a year and a
been a
half
while,
or
yeah.
longer since the last season came out.
They did that like mini season. That was like
Yeah.
I forget.
Well,
what it was
they're-
called. It was
they're-
like Fresh
this-
Brew or something. I don't remember.
Yeah, the seasons are only, I mean, the first few were long because it was bringing it over from the web series.
Yeah.
But like the new Netflix season was only like 10 episodes or something like that, which I'm really glad Netflix is doing that, because when
Yeah.
you bring in a new TV show and it's 24 episodes long, you just get burnt
Golly,
out so
such a
quick.
slog.
And then the only other thing is right now, my wife and I are watching through Friends. I
Heck yeah.
actually really like that show.
Yeah, you do.
It's got some really funny parts, but it's also got parts where I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm. That's how I feel, I think.
But I think for me, it's just, I think I'm watching it mainly because my wife likes it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, Netflix is apparently going to get rid of it or whatever.
Yeah,
and I
The
want to watch
Office.
it before it goes away.
Yeah, because of the
But-
streaming wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think,
who knows?
I think Netflix is going down, man. It's my bold prediction
Speaking
for
of
2020.
streaming wars, did you guys see Disney's package they released like yesterday or 2 days ago? You get for $12.99, you get Hulu, ESPN Plus, and the Disney service.
With ads.
Is it
Yeah,
with
it's
ads?
all-
That's something I
all
heard
three-
today at work.
All three with ads.
Yeah, which
Because Hulu by
I don't
itself
know.
costs like $6 if you pay ads,
Mhm.
or if you do have ads. If
Yeah.
you pay the premium, it's like $11 or $12
Yeah.
for Hulu, and
Yeah.
it's no ads. So,
yeah, my wife and I are gonna have to talk about that because we hate ads.
yeah,
So-
we have the full price Hulu, and it's awesome.
Yeah, that's
So,
what we have also.
yeah.
So we'll see.
Um,
Who knows?
Yeah, I think Netflix is going down.
I can see
Unless
that.
they can strum out some more like
I mean, Stranger
good
Things
originals.
is really, and Riverdale, I guess, are the two that are holding on for dear life.
Yeah, a lot of the other ones are dying out. Well, I mean, still technically, like, I mean, Comedians in Cars is a Netflix original. I do like a lot of the comedy stand-ups
Yeah, they do.
that they're
have a lot
coming
of-
out with.
Yeah,
Like,
those are good.
I think that's really cool that they're supporting, because Comedy Central's essentially dead as far as like putting out new stand-up stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to see like
Yeah, they tried something with Fluffy, his TV show. Is that Netflix?
It really
yeah,
is.
it actually was good.
Really?
I
haven't watched
Jan and
it.
I watched
He's
it.
like a teacher.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. It wasn't by any means a top 25 show, but I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. It's got a lot of really funny jokes, but also a lot of really serious Latino American issues,
Yeah.
especially like Latino American students, which I
cool.
thought was really cool.
Yeah, that's
because it's basically a charter school that he's teaching at.
Huh.
And it's I thought it was a cool concept.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. I've put it on my list. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah.
Okay, Luke, what you
Oh,
been
yeah.
watching?
So I watched the movie. I mentioned after we finished the episode last week. I was looking at watching the movie Chronicle, which I did end up watching it.
Okay.
It's that handheld camera, so it's like self-shot
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of movie. It's a superhero movie. It's about these three guys in high school. One is a kind of socially awkward, just very introverted with like a rough home life kid, and then his whole thing is he wants to document everything, and so that's why you're watching through his lens
Okay.
the whole time. And then there's a super popular guy in school who's played by Killmonger himself,
Michael B. Jordan.
Michael B. Jordan.
Okay.
And then there's his cousin, the inverted kid's cousin, is the other character. And so they're all at a party one night, and some like went off into the woods. They find this hole in the ground, and then those three go into the hole. They find this thing down there, and get these powers of basically telekinesis. And so the whole rest of the time is about them. They're kind of, the whole thing is like with their superpowers, because they're kind of weak at first. They're not like good with it, but they say it's just like training your muscles. Like you get stronger as you practice. And so it's about that time, and the introverted kid's mom has like some terminal disease, and like she's dying. His dad's a drunk and stuff, and eventually one of them turns into pretty much a supervillain. Like things just spiral out of control for him, and he becomes that. And the last 30 minutes of the movie is intense because it's one of the kids having to fight the other one and try and stop him. It's pretty good. It's a short movie. It's one of the better movies that are shot like that with the camera and the handheld style.
Yeah.
It's because a lot of them you see they're like super shaky and they're kind of hard to watch. But this one, for the most part, it's shot decently well for that. But it's a super low budget movie, and just like they did well with what they could.
What's it on? Did you buy it?
I rented it on Amazon Prime for like $3 or whatever.
Solid.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's on anything for free. I'm looking it up right now because I remember you talking about it, and I meant to look it up, but now that I'm looking it up, I remember seeing the trailer for this.
Yeah.
Because it's from 2012.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was
pretty recent.
But it's also, I mean, that's 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So I just looked up an image, and Michael B. Jordan looks like he's a kid. I mean, he
he
doesn't
looks
look like Killmonger. And the main character, I'm guessing, is the dude who played Harry Osborn in The Amazing Spider-Man, the new one.
Green Goblin, yeah. But it was
interesting. I'll have to check it out.
I thought it was worth the watch. It's not. I mean, it's not one I'm gonna like want to watch. Like I'll probably see it again, but like it's not one I'm gonna want to watch all the time. I wasn't like blown away by it, but it was a very interesting take on like the superhero genre, about the process people coming powers and how they deal with them and all that. It was pretty decent. So cool. That's what I watched this week.
Sweet.
Very cool.
We'll move into our top fives.
Yeah, let's do it. So this week we watched a movie called Whiplash, which has to do with drumming. And so we thought we'd go a little different route with our top 5, and we would do top 5 film scores / soundtracks. For me personally, this was pretty tough. I'm a sucker for a good soundtrack. So I've got 3 honorable mentions.
Oh, dang.
I have 4.
Oh, I have 2.
I had about 7, and I nailed it down to 3. So we'll let Luke go first.
Yeah, let Luke go first.
All right, so my first honorable mention is Lord of the Rings.
Okay, yeah.
That one, honestly, it's just kind of like iconic. Like, the music
iconic.
from the Shire and all the battles and everything.
Definitely.
My next one was The Great Gatsby.
Okay.
The new one?
Yeah.
Interesting. That one had a mix of music, so it had some newer music in it mixed with some older style kind of swing music from the 20s.
Yeah.
That was one that that's a movie where the music really sticks out in it because they do a lot of those like long driving scenes or long pans and stuff. And so during that time, they're playing that music. And so you really notice the music in that movie. My third one is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Wow.
Oh, dang.
Kind of another thing where a lot of car scenes and stuff, and they really amp up the music in those, and they play kind of those 60s classics, which really, really hit you hard. My fourth one is Interstellar.
Nice.
It's a very good atmospheric movie, or music. I went and listened through all these soundtracks today just to confirm my like thoughts on them. And that one for sure. Like there's a track on the Interstellar one called Black Hole, and I was sitting there listening. I was like, man, that's and the one with the water planet and stuff. Oh my gosh, I was sitting there just like getting very like intense feelings, just like, oh my gosh,
so good.
So yeah, those were my honorable mentions.
Cool. So my 3 honorable mentions were Guardians of the Galaxy 1.
Yeah.
Love that soundtrack. You guys probably have that one on your list somewhere.
Nope.
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Oh, yeah.
I love the music in that movie.
Classic.
Classic. It really almost, redefined kind of the genre. And people make fun of that song all the time and parody that song all the time. But that's a great soundtrack. And then I put the Dark Knight trilogy on here as a honorable mention for me.
For sure.
The music in that trilogy is not as iconic as, say, like Indiana Jones or Star Wars or something like that.
You definitely know it when you hear it, though.
That Batman theme that comes out every, 30 to 45 minutes, and it amps up at the end of every movie, and you're just like, oh, yeah. Like, that kind of stuff's awesome. And then Hans Zimmer does a great job with different themes for different characters. So like what comes to mind for me is every time the Joker's on screen or about to be on screen, there's that weird like violin like scratching sound, and it's horrible, but it like just won't end, and it's incredible. And then in the third movie, whenever Bane's around, he's got his own little theme, and then whenever Catwoman's around, she's got her little theme with like little bells, and and so he does a great job with all that kind of stuff, and he's actually on my list a couple of more times.
Very true to the characters, and that's Hans Zimmer, right?
So that's my honorable mention list, Paul.
Cool, yeah. My honorable mentions are, so I'm going to first preface this by saying I kind of, like we said, it's a mix of scores and soundtracks, so I kind of did a little mix. My honorable mentions are the Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one.
Great.
Very good one.
I did like the sound, again, Hans Zimmer. Or actually, I think the first one is a different guy. It's like Klaus something or other, but I think he did 2 and 3. But I really like the first one. The second and third one were good. I didn't listen to other than in the movie, I didn't listen to the other soundtracks. But so my other honorable mention is a movie that I guarantee neither one of you have ever seen, probably never even heard of.
Okay.
It's a movie called Beyond the Sea, and it stars Kevin Spacey, and he is playing Bobby Darin.
Okay.
And Kevin Spacey actually sings like all the tracks himself.
Really?
And it's amazing. He sounds so good.
Kevin Spacey,
really
huh?
It's
the music artist.
Yeah, I mean, he's an amazing actor, but also at the same time a really awesome singer. Believe it or not.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so that's my honorable
I almost
mentions.
put Tarzan on here.
Hey man, it's a good soundtrack.
Phil Collins. I was really close.
It's a good soundtrack, bro.
I was really close.
Yeah,
it was
it's a good one, man.
It was good. Okay, Luke, number 5.
Number 5 for me is "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou."
Okay.
Yeah,
solid.
Yeah, that one. Like I said, I listened to them all again today, and that one just has that very like country, like old timey feel to it, and the Soggy Bottom Boys.
That's a funny movie. I forgot.
Yeah,
about that
I
movie.
thought just like a lot of mine was like I think of the theme of the movie, I think of the setting, and then I look at the soundtrack. I'm like, does the soundtrack fit that, and how well does it fit it? And this one, it really fits. And then music is a key part in that movie because they do have that singing scene where they sing. I can't remember, but they're just called the Soggy Bottom Boys. But yeah, it's a key part in the movie, and it definitely, for me, it elevated the movie for sure.
Cool. Number 5 for me is Pirates of the Caribbean. I kind of lumped it as a whole series. Yeah. Some of the music in those movies is just really, really iconic. The Jack Sparrow theme that gets played all the time is really popular. I love the famous Pirates of the Caribbean song that everybody knows.
Like the main
theme that gets played all the time whenever they're like on the sea or they're having a fight or whatever. Like, I just loved those movies as a kid, and those just kind of stuck with me. And again, Hans Zimmer's the one who gets a lot of the credit, but it was somebody else. I forget his name.
It's Klaus something. I can't remember.
Bennett, something like that. But he's I've never heard of him before other than that movie. So, but yeah, those are great movies, and the music definitely is a huge part of that. Number 5.
My number 5 is, so again, kind of combining both the score and the actual like lyrical songs were the James Bond movies, and I lump that as a whole because I love. I actually have a soundtrack that's all of the theme songs.
Cool.
For James Bond, and I love that. But then again,
which one's your favorite?
Oh man,
I don't know that many. I just think of Skyfall.
It's probably either a really close tie between Live and Let Die or Goldeneye. Those are two.
Which movie is it called Live and Let Die?
Yep, it is, and it's Paul McCartney. He plays it whenever he plays live, I'm sure. Yeah. Great tune. That probably is my favorite.
Yeah. Okay. I always think of the scene in Shrek when I hear that song. Whenever the Frog King like dies and they like put him in the shoebox.
Oh, yeah.
They're all singing on the lily pad.
Yeah, that's the song. That's right. I forgot about that.
I always think of that scene. I always think of Skyfall when I think of like
Skyfall's a good one too. I mean,
Adele killed it.
Adele was great.
For sure.
Okay, number 4.
For me is Forrest Gump.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so since the movie goes through kind of like as Forrest grows up, and it goes like kind of decade by decade. So it starts out and you're listening to like Elvis. Yeah. And then like, for instance, he's going to fighting Vietnam, they're playing Fortunate Son.
Yep.
And so just like that's like for me that's the iconic Vietnam war
definitely.
song.
Mm-hmm.
And so just their use of the music showing the decades throughout and picking the certain songs that they did for those decades, kind of almost like the hits really.
Yeah.
That helps tie up the movie, because I mean the movie is it's showing his life through pretty much the decades. He's going through all these iconic moments in time where he's playing football at Alabama. He has like a run-in with like the Black Panthers. He's talking up there with Martin Luther King at like some point. And so using that music really, it shows you the times without them actually telling you. It's like kind of subconsciously.
Yeah.
Like, all right, we're in the 60s now. All right, we're in the 50s, or we're in this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's
cool.
a very solid soundtrack.
Yeah, definitely.
Number 4 for me is Braveheart.
Mm.
I love the soundtrack in Braveheart because of the range of the soundtrack. It's one of those movies, or one of those soundtracks I went actually and listened to yesterday, I think. But because there's romantic songs in that soundtrack, there's really sad songs in that soundtrack, there's really dramatic.
Really happy songs in that soundtrack.
No, but there's so much range in that score. It's just really, really impressive. And then I'm a sucker for the bagpipe. I love the bagpipe.
Okay,
And so anytime they bring that in, I'm in. That's good stuff. So I love that movie. So I'm kind of biased toward that score. But I love that movie. So that's number 4 for me. Paul?
Cool. My number 4 is actually the Matrix soundtracks.
Ooh,
Again,
yeah.
A good mix. Actually, all of my numbers are a mix of score and at the same time actual sung music.
Yeah, yeah.
Because at the time, I think every kid in my genre or age group or whatever you want to say had a little quote unquote emo phase, like when it was or hard rock metal, like. So that's kind of the soundtrack that The Matrix is. But at the same time, the score done by Don Davis is just so intense. It really is a part of the movie, which we'll get to, because I know we're doing an episode on that. We'll definitely be talking more about. But it's
I'm excited
one of my
to
favorites.
get to The Matrix.
I am too. I've never seen those movies, so I'm really pumped to watch them.
I've even seen them as like a kid. I saw them.
Yeah, I'm excited. Okay, Luke, number 3.
Number 3 for me. I honestly didn't want to put this on my list because I figured it's kind of a given with everyone, but it's Star Wars.
Just the whole thing,
totally.
all of it.
I just think all of them.
Yeah.
I just think John Williams just a
phenomenal.
brilliant
This
job.
whole list could have been John Williams, honestly.
Like
Easily.
would you say like the main theme's probably the most iconic, like
the
theme
Star Wars
song?
theme,
Yeah.
like the credit, like at the beginning scene. Yeah, that theme is really popular. The Skywalker theme is really
Like in
popular,
the
and then the
song
Darth
they played-
Vader, like the Empire
Yeah.
March.
Imperial March.
The Duel of Fates song
Duel of
is great.
Fates, yeah.
The one on Mustafar in episode 3.
Like it's like the Duel of Fates, but like just slightly different.
And then
because
you
of
have
the-
Leia's theme, which they played in the new episode 9 trailer, which is just like, it's like, oh,
That's great. No, I'm with you, man.
Exhale. It's like,
with you.
I really didn't want to do it, but
I'm with you.
It's
No,
a given.
You can't have this list without Star Wars.
Well, you can't have this list without John Williams
And
either.
you
I mean,
literally-
that dude,
no doubt.
he wrote the 20th Century Fox theme, like the dun, 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 like he did that, like so.
Well, and he's Jurassic Park too, right?
Yeah, Jurassic Park,
E.T.,
Indiana Jones.
Jaws.
Like how iconic are all of those?
Oh, totally.
It's incredible. He's
It's ridiculous, dude.
one of the greatest composers like ever.
For sure.
Number 3 for me is Interstellar.
Yeah.
I literally, goodness,
Interstellar.
dude, I love this movie so much, and I love the soundtrack of this movie so much. It's so simple, and Hans Zimmer gets made fun of for it all the time because it literally just sounds like he like fell asleep on his organ. But
Hey, it
dude,
fits, though.
it is so good, and there's just like these long shots. You haven't seen it yet, but there's these long shots of like their ship in outer space, and it's just like, and it's it's so good.
Does Hans Zimmer do all of Chris Nolan's movies?
He's done all of them since Prestige.
He's not doing his new one, Tenet.
He's not doing Tenet.
Okay.
He's doing Dune instead.
Oh, okay.
But he did Prestige. I'm pretty sure he did Prestige. I'm not going to guarantee that one. But he did Inception. He did Interstellar. He did the Dark Knight trilogy. He did Dunkirk. Dunkirk is Really good. I almost put that on here too. But anyway, Interstellar is really great. There's one theme that gets played. Hans Zimmer classic. Just pick a theme and go for it, and it gets played the entire movie, and it is heartbreaking every time you hear it. And then at the end, it's like almost like just a tiny bit of a riff on that theme,
a little bit different.
It's just awesome, dude. It's great. Interstellar for me is up there for sure. Number 3, Paul.
Number 3, again, a movie that I'm pretty sure neither one of you guys have seen, called Chef. It's Jon Favreau's.
I know of this movie.
It's an amazing. It's one of my. I think it is on my top 25, probably in the at least higher side of it.
Yeah.
It's Jon Favreau who plays a chef. Figures.
Man, really?
But I'm not going to get too into it, but great movie. Jon Favreau actually trained to be a chef, so it's not like he's faking it all.
Cool.
He actually learned. He directed it, and I think he wrote most of it, too.
He's so good.
Great movie. But it's like the classic Jon Favreau cast, too. It's Scarlett Johansson, Robert Downey Jr. is in part of it. Dustin Hoffman's a part of it. Sofia Vergara plays his ex-wife. Like it's an all-star cast. John Leguizamo. Great movie, great cast. Well, I'm sure I'll talk about it again at some other point.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Again, it's a bunch of different styles of music also, where it's got because there's one part where they go to New Orleans, so they do like New Orleans style music. Then they go to Austin, and it's like blues music, and so the soundtrack is very versatile, which I love.
All right. My number 2 is Blade Runner 2049.
Okay.
Wow.
So this is actually, I looked it up. Hans Zimmer is actually one of the composers on this.
Solid.
Along with
He's everywhere, man.
Dude, he does everything.
Benjamin Wallfish. So this soundtrack is very similar to the first Blade Runner, but man, this freaking movie though, so
you keep talking about it. I have to go watch it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to watch it, huh?
I've got to watch the original first, so
but
I've got a long list of movies that I'm supposed to watch that you guys keep giving me, and I can't catch up. So.
Hey, get up your game, man.
Yeah,
but
I have to have a night where we just try and blow through some of them.
We should just
Tarantino
a
marathon.
straight movie night.
Dude, I'm in.
But no, this is just it's very like atmospheric, like synth music. I want to say like it's
Stranger Things style.
So yeah, kind of that style.
Riff, yeah.
It's a like a cyberpunk movie, and so it's that time. It fits it so dang well. It's like because there's a lot of machinery, a lot of electronic. Everything's kind of, and the music's that way too, and the music. So in the Blade Runner movies, especially the first one, I've told you guys this before, but there's not a ton of dialogue. In the second one, there's a whole lot more, but you still have those moments where it's just kind of like atmosphere, really, and the tracks fill that space so well. And then you can tell when things are ramping up because it gets a little higher pitched or something. They'll like press a different key or whatever it is, and it's just oh my gosh, I can sit there and listen to it all day. It is so good. But
that's cool.
It's not just the soundtrack for that movie. The actual movie it's probably in my top 10 movies.
Wow. Nice. That's crazy, dude, because you just watched it.
I just watched it.
Number 2 for me is Star Wars. I'm not going to talk about it too much. I love Star Wars. I've always loved Star Wars.
Yep.
We're going to have a whole month of episodes on Star Wars later this year, so get ready. But we'll maybe queue up some music for that. I'll have to get some copyright.
Call up John Weather, call up Disney and be like, hey.
Right. This music is provided by. So love Star Wars. I mean, what can you say? This dude, John Williams, is awesome. So
he's old, too. I mean, he's still out there straight killing it.
He does this show like every once in a while in the Boston Pops, and it's like a big, like, I forget what it's called. I don't know anything about music. It's like playing all his hits, basically. Yeah. And he like runs them all together, and he goes through every movie that he's ever made almost, and it's incredible. It's all on YouTube for like, it's like 45 minutes or something on YouTube. It's crazy.
Oh, I bet you it could be. If they had the whole concert in there, it could be longer.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. But I love Star Wars, so.
Cool.
Number 2.
Number 2 for me, okay, in keeping with the same soundtrack score, my number 2 soundtrack is the Blues Brothers.
Hey,
love
nice.
Love that soundtrack. And then the number 2 score movie for me is Lord of the Rings.
Nice.
So
nice.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That's two incredible choices.
Number 1, Luke.
Oh, my number one movie of all time, soundtrack wise, is Tron Legacy.
Oh my
Dude,
goodness.
no, it's so good, man. I agree.
I haven't seen Tron, so I can't say anything about it.
It's
but
good, man.
Number
All
one?
Daft Punk.
Number one, Daft Punk kills it.
Really?
Yes.
And it's not like that, like what you probably imagine Daft Punk is in your
Yeah,
head. It
right.
is
It's not all
so
techno.
Okay.
good.
I'll check it out.
Like,
I would say just listen to the soundtrack.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'll go on Apple Music and I'll check it out.
it's pretty
Yeah.
pretty awesome. It has those. It kind of, for me, it falls in line with like Blade Runner, that very cyber kind of
Yeah.
sound to
Okay,
it. There's a
okay.
lot of intense moments in that movie, and they play that so well. Because you think
Yeah.
of Daft Punk, and you think like,
Yeah.
what's that one song they Up All Night to Get Lucky or whatever.
Yeah,
whatever
Get
that is.
Lucky.
Yeah, but no, you listen to this soundtrack. It is,
Dude, it's
it
good.
is so good, and that's also, I think that movie is incredibly underrated.
I would agree.
I want if there's something, because Disney's been in the habit of rebooting things lately. If they want to like continue a story or reboot something, I think Tron.
There used to be anyway a big underground push for a third one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's ever going to happen. I think they should, because I love the original also. But the second movie, Legacy, was great.
Yeah, Legacy's awesome.
Because Jeff Bridges, because he was in the original.
Olivia Wilde's in it.
Olivia Wilde. I can't remember the main actor's name.
He's not like a.
He's not a big name,
no.
but he's in a few pretty good movies that I've seen and enjoyed.
Check
But
it out.
it's there. I have them if you want to borrow them.
Check it out, yeah.
The old one is kind of a struggle because it's from like 1982 or something or other.
Yeah.
And it looks horrible because they're essentially going into a computer and like it's like looks like an old video game, which it was actually based on an old video game.
Right.
But again, I enjoy the movies.
That movie's good, but like
Yeah.
enough about the actual movie. Yeah, the soundtrack is it's
Yeah.
my favorite soundtrack. It's
For sure.
great.
I agree with that.
So my number one is, I don't know if you guys guessed or not, but my number one is Lord of the Rings.
I figured.
I love Lord of the Rings. I used to fall asleep to this soundtrack score, I guess, but I used to literally like make playlists of like the Shire music and fall asleep to it. I love this.
Good stuff.
Whenever I'm at school and I need to work and I don't want music with words in it, then I'll pull up Howard Shore and I'll go through the and I'll just play the Lord of the Rings soundtrack. I love Lord of the Rings, dude. I think it was my number one favorite movie of all time was Return of the King. So
Yeah.
that's all I got to say. Number one for you, Paul.
All right, so number one for me is both Guardians movies
Mm-hmm.
for the soundtrack. I love those. Like those are. I have a playlist of both on my Spotify, and that'll just be running in my car like once every other week. I'll just listen to that.
It's so good.
Best score for me is Star Wars.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I went back and forth, number one and number two, with Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. And I couldn't decide. I went with Lord of the Rings for more personal reasons, not necessarily an objective reason.
yeah.
I don't really have a good argument, other than I really like those movies and I'm
they're both
attached
great.
to them.
That's all right.
As far as iconic goes, I 100% agree that Star Wars is number one. So,
Yeah.
Where'd you have Star Wars at, Luke? 3?
3, I think so. Yeah.
And Lord of the Rings is an honorable mention for you.
Yeah.
Gosh, that hurts, man.
Hey, it's an honorable mention.
Hurts
It's
my
still made it in
feelings.
the top 10.
He had some hot takes for us.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
That's true.
And I
That's
can't
true.
disagree with any of them.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Interstellar soundtrack whenever you watch that movie, because that was
that's gonna
number
be soon for me.
3 for me and 4
It was
for
an
you.
honorable mention for
Honorable
me.
mention for you. Yeah, it's really good. I'm also, I guess I'm not disappointed. I was hoping you guys would have what's it called on there? Dark Knight.
I thought about it. I almost put it in my honorable mention. I was like, I don't know.
Did you have Guardians on your list?
No.
I had Guardians on my honorable mention. That's number one. Number two, the music's not as good.
Oh
in my
man, I
opinion.
disagree.
Really?
No.
I think they're both amazing.
I think honestly for them, like they single-handedly almost revived that genre
Oh, totally.
in that era.
Totally.
But I know a bunch of people have a playlist of just like that music.
Yeah.
So,
It's one of my saved ones on Spotify.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else, you guys? Weird
no.
comments?
We'll move
questions?
into the movie review of Whiplash.
Yeah, let's do it. Paul, you got the deets?
Yeah, let me get it right here. 1 second. All right. So, Whiplash was from 2014. It stars J.K. Simmons and Miles Teller. Let's see here. I know J.K. Simmons won Best Supporting Actor
For like
Oscar.
everything.
Definitely Oscar. Yeah, I'm sure pretty much everything else as well. Directed by Damien Chazelle.
What else?
Chazelle?
Do you have a list of whatever he did?
Let me
Because I've never
see.
heard of him before.
I should be able to find it real quick.
Oh, he's a young guy. He's a French-American director.
Oh, come on.
Oh, he did
I don't
La La Land and First Man.
Oh,
I
so
heard First
two
Man
other
was good.
Ryan Gosling movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I heard
Okay.
First Man
I haven't
was
seen
good.
either one, so.
I've seen La La Land. La La Land was alright.
Okay. Well, yeah, so I'll read through this synopsis real quick. Andrew Neiman is an ambitious young jazz drummer in pursuit of rising to the top of his elite music conservatory. Terrence Fletcher, J.K. Simmons, and also Andrew Neiman is Miles Teller, sorry. Terrence Fletcher, J.K. Simmons, an instructor known for his terrifying teaching methods, discovers Andrew and transfers the aspiring drummer into the top jazz ensemble, forever changing the young man's life. But Andrew's passion to achieve perfection quickly spirals into obsession as his ruthless teacher pushes him to the brink of his ability and his sanity. That's a pretty good.
Pretty accurate.
Yeah, like, whew.
That doesn't put into words. I don't know what does.
How much money did it make?
Let's see here. It was a 93 on Rotten Tomatoes. I know that's not the money,
Dang.
but
Yeah.
93,
Pretty
8.5 on IMDb, 88% Metacritic.
Dang.
Let's
That might
see
be the
what-
highest rated movie we've ever done, as far as those three things go.
I think
All
so.
three
Maybe,
together.
yeah.
Like Interstellar probably wasn't that high.
No, it wasn't.
Not on all three.
All right.
I don't even think
This
so.
might be the highest rated movie we've ever watched.
I think so. Let me look back through.
I mean, all three of them. All three of those scores together, as far as
Yeah.
Metacritic, Rotten
Yeah.
Tomatoes, and IMDb.
All right, so it says Whiplash grossed $13.1 million in the U.S. and Canada, $35.9 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $49 million against a budget of $3.3 million.
So that's a pretty good.
That's a substantial
Yeah.
bump.
Their
Like,
budget,
dang.
man. Their budget was so small because
There's no CG.
there was
There's no.
Yeah,
no need
like,
for anything.
It was all practical. There were hardly any different settings.
Yeah, I'm sure they paid for their gear and they paid for the actors and the musicians, and that was probably it.
That was probably most of the chunk of it.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Well, any more info we need on the movie before we dive in?
Not that I'm seeing. Let's see.
Who did
What-
the cinematography? Because this is one of my favorite shot movies. Like, it's shot beautifully.
Let's see here. Cinematography. Sharon Meir? M-E-I-R. I'm going to guess it's probably one of the director's French friends. Let's see.
Okay.
The dude wrote it just straight up like an original screenplay, right? There's no.
I think
it's not based on anything at all. It's just him. He just made it
it's
up.
not based on a true story.
Yeah, it's all fictional. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it's a fictional place in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a feeling what they based on, just from the one sentence said of, it's the top music school in the world. It's based on Juilliard, which arguably would be the best music school in the world.
Yeah.
So I'm not seeing writer off the bat.
Well, it said director, writer. It was the same.
Oh,
guy.
did it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, so
Yeah.
Paul, do you want to talk about the 5 sections that we
Yeah.
score the movie based on?
So we rate our movies on 5 different sections here. The first one is idea and premise, then character, plot, conflict, tension, urgency, and then cinematic elements, whether that be music, the way it was shot, writing, special effects, what have you. So let's start off with the idea and premise.
So, for me, this was a movie about music, and I have a couple notes that I want to make on this section, but
Yeah.
I don't know jack squat about music.
Me either.
But I still found this movie extremely enjoyable. And that's more of probably a cinematic element, I guess, than an intro kind of thing.
Well, they don't.
But-
you can make assumptions about the music,
Yeah.
Right.
and like based off their facial expressions
Right.
and how they act
Right.
towards it.
Right. And there were certain scenes whenever like the drumming was particularly bad or whatever that like an idiot like me who knows nothing about music could
Yeah.
tell that the redheaded guy like wasn't as good of a drummer
Right.
as this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Which like that's not hard to tell, but what I'm saying is it would have been really easy as a writer or as a director to really emphasize the like nerdiness of the music, and then like alienate like average people, and he totally didn't do that at all.
Right.
Like if you like music, I bet you like this movie, like you like elements of this movie more,
even if you don't like jazz music.
even if you don't like jazz music, because you'll understand the tempo and the different music lingo that they use, which I know none of. And I thought they did a great job as far as balancing those two things while being really, really accurate and like factual, but also not being too much into that side of it.
Yeah.
Well, it changed my perspective of jazz music. Is like it's a lot more intense than what I thought it was. Because jazz for me is like just a bunch of guys up on stage, just kind of like for doing it freely, just like like just to see.
Whatever,
maybe it's not that way with a band or something, but in this band setting, I was like, man, that's intense.
Oh yeah.
Like, or maybe it's probably just being in a band in general, like just how intense that is.
Right.
How much practice
well, and it's
there really
cutthroat
is.
too. That's what I didn't understand about it, and they really highlight that in the movie a lot. Is how cutthroat that music market is in New York, but also in the world in general. That for me was what stood out in the idea/premise section. Some of my other notes were I love the setup of the movie and the introduction of characters, as far as how subtle it was and how simple it was, and it was perfect. Like they didn't need to do more setup. It just like it was literally this kid playing drums. Guy walks in. He said they don't even say his name, and he says, "You know who I am?" And the kid nods, and then he like starts playing, and he like is clearly disappointed when the guy leaves.
Yeah.
And like to me, that was literally all the setup you needed for the entire movie.
You find out that J.K. Simmons' character's a jerk, pretty much.
And then instantly.
And you know that he knows a lot about music. You know that he knows a lot about like what kind of people he's looking for. You know it's a school of some kind or some kind of, I don't know, industry, something that's really high level. And you know that this kid is new, rookie, talented, but raw kind of thing. And they literally don't talk at all. And they don't know their names, and you don't even know what's going on. But it's all the setup you need, and it's really well done. And they do that throughout the movie. They really don't have to explain much at all.
The movie as a whole is very simplistic. It's a kid that wants to get better, and just in the description, and a teacher has harsh teaching stuff, and it's just kind of those two worlds colliding and how those interact and everything. That's basically it.
I gave this section an 8 out of 10. I like movies that have a little bit more going on, personally. This movie was refreshing, though, because it was so simple and so straightforward. But personally, I like a little bit more subplots and other tie-ins and things going on. Like I like more of a meta-narrative, kind of all linked together at the end. That's more my style, so that's kind of a personal preference, but I want to hear y'all's thoughts on that section as a whole.
I agree with you. I gave it an 8. For me, it's like this movie was so short anyways. It was an hour and 37 minutes.
Yeah.
And so when you have a movie that's small, I think having this kind of plot for it is perfect. Because if you try to squeeze too much in there, then it kind of becomes convoluted, and it feels like a kind of a mess. And at the end, they have to like wrap things up real quick.
Yeah.
And so for me, this is like the story was perfect for how short it was. I didn't feel like everything to me felt very concise. Everything had a purpose for the most part. It was a very clean movie to me, and that really showed in the time as well as the storytelling.
Yeah, I think they did a great job with the setup. I just personally would have wanted more to it. So I totally agree. I think they killed it with the story that they went for. And to me, it's just like, I guess that's more of an idea or premise rather than like the setup that I'm kind of arguing against a little bit. Like the premise was a little too simple for my taste, if that makes sense, even though I still like this movie a lot.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I actually gave it a 7 for honestly all the same reasons you guys are saying. Nothing really wrong with it. It just
the simplicity of it.
Yeah, and I mean, but at the same time, I probably scored this movie being a little low. even though I really did enjoy the movie. So I feel good with my score, but I agree.
Honestly, I'm gonna go home tonight or tomorrow and YouTube the first like 3 to 5 minutes of this movie, and I might use it to teach introductions to stories in my writing class at school, because they literally, like we talked about, they set up the entire story with less than 50 words.
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally, it was a phenomenal setup. I just think that we're all on the same page when we're saying that it was a little too simple.
Yeah, the whole idea was just a little...
Yeah. Which I still like the movie a lot. I think I gave it a pretty good score.
This was a very character-driven movie. It kind of makes me think of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, how that was very character-driven. And so what they do is they give you a simple plot, but they give you somewhat complex characters, or very well-written characters. J.K. Simmons definitely deserves all those awards, because his acting, his dialogue in this movie, the way he delivered the dialogue. Well, I mean, we'll talk about that when we get to character more, but...
Well, so we're pretty much in
I can say, if you want to keep going, we're right there.
Yeah, let's just transition. Our second section is character. So basically, this entire movie is 2 characters. I mean,
you get like a little bit of 3, like with
I would say a little
bit
of 4 if you include
and
the
dad. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, again, they're both the girlfriend and the dad are minor, but at the same time, like they
play a role.
I really get his perspective. Miles Teller's Andrew, his character, his relationship with both of them, like how he felt like he had to exclude her because he wanted to. That was his.
Well, it showed how his passion became his obsession, and that's just that they threw her in there to show that.
Yeah.
So obviously, we all agree that J.K. Simmons was phenomenal. He played a guy named
Terrence Fletcher.
Yeah, Fletcher. And he's like the teacher character, and he's a jerk, straight up jerk, and
with a purpose, though.
With a purpose, and that was what was so interesting. I wrote in my notes for character, I said it was cool to see them come full circle.
Yeah.
And then in parentheses, I put twice.
Hey,
because literally, which this is probably more plot, but at the beginning of the movie, Andrew idolizes Fletcher.
Yep.
Right? Seeks his approval like crazy, gets his approval, accomplishes his goal.
Right.
Fletcher twists it on him and says, I still want more.
Pushes him,
Pushes him. Andrew hates his guts, sues him, tackles him off the stage, and they're like, I've broken up forever, right?
Yeah.
That's come full circle once. Second time, they make up in the bar, right?
Which I love that
they
scene.
Become friends. They become
scene.
Friends again. Offers him a job, takes it, pumped, redeemed our relationship. Stabs him in the back, gives him no music, plays the wrong song in front of the most important show of his life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then comes full circle again by coaching him, I guess, directing him as he has like the most epic solo ever, right? And so like it goes full circle and then it does it all over again. And so I love that about the 2 characters and their relationship, how dynamic it was and how it wasn't stagnant ever. Like literally one of them wanted something from the other one the entire movie, and it changed scene to scene to scene, and I loved that.
They both wanted greatness. Miles Teller's character wanted to be great, and then if J.K. Simmons, Fletcher, there's a moment in the movie, I think, when they're sitting at the bar after he finished playing his piano, he's like, he never had that great student.
Yeah.
And that's something he wants. That's his thing. He wants to have that great student. And that's what, I mean, that's it coming full circle with that solo at the end with Andrew, right? Was his character's name.
Yeah.
But I got a couple questions. So what did you, J.K. Simmons' character, he lies about Casey, whatever, the kid that he said
he died in a car wreck.
One of his old students died in a car wreck, but as it turns out, the emotional abuse and through his teaching methods that he does towards this Casey character actually made him depressed, whatever, and then he ended up hanging himself. There's that, and then the scene, because then Andrew, they're like trying to get him out of trying to get Fletcher kicked out of school, and so they're asking Andrew to vouch and say like, yes, he is emotionally abusive and stuff. He ends up getting kicked out. At the end of the movie, Fletcher comes up to him when they're on stage about to perform in front of the people and says, "You'd like,
I knew it was you."
Yeah, I knew it was you.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think about those two moments with that character? Do you think
With Simmons' character?
Do you think those are teaching moments he's trying to like teach through, or like what do you process those moments as?
So for me, the first scene, whenever he plays the music in the classroom
Mm-hmm.
and he starts to cry at the end, and he says, "I just wanted to show you guys how he could play," or whatever he says. To me, that scene was him trying to convince himself that what he did created this greatness in that student, even though he drove him to suicide,
himself,
right?
Yeah.
And so to me, that was his character justifying his actions to other people without actually doing it for real. Like, because he lies and says that he died in a car wreck.
Yeah.
And then the bar, that threw me for a loop. That was a huge plot twist for me, was whenever he walked out on stage and said, "I knew it was you," and he didn't have the music. I did not see that coming at all. That was awesome. And so to me, that was 100% spite and just him.
Revenge.
Yeah, just 100%.
And then it just turned into...
And then at the end, he was like... So basically, the way I would explain it is that he essentially did that to run him off, right? And to prove a point that he's a jerk and whatever. And then whenever he came back, he said, or before he leaves, he says, "I knew it wasn't you," right?
Yeah.
Or he says, "I knew you didn't have it in you," or whatever. And then he leaves. He comes back to prove that he is like the greatest drummer of this generation or whatever. And then he realizes that he is the student that he's always wanted.
Yeah.
And that's when he starts to actually coach. Because the first couple of minutes that he's on, Andrew's on playing the drums by himself. Fletcher's like mad and like trying to get him to stop. And a couple minutes later, he starts to realize what's happening, and that's when he takes his jacket off and he starts conducting and he starts, whatever.
Things start getting like good.
And he starts going crazy with, anyway. So that would be the way I would explain that. And to me, that's why J.K. Simmons' character was so interesting, because literally you never knew what he was going to say. You never knew what he was going to do. He was so dynamic.
He was such a wild card as a character.
Was he a villain? Was he a hero? Was he a mentor? Was he a terrible teacher? Was he like...
I was thinking about that at the end. I'm like, so what do we classify this guy as? Like,
was he a villain?
Like a anti-hero kind of thing?
I don't know.
I mean, if you really are diving into it, and you probably would know the terminology better than me, he's the technical protagonist of the movie.
Yeah.
Would I call him a villain or anti-hero? No, not really. I would just call him the antagonist, the one who antagonizes the main character.
Yeah.
It's a good way of putting it. He's almost like an evil Gandalf is kind of what he is.
Yeah.
Or an evil Dumbledore, an evil Yoda who like wants the best for his people, but
just ways of teaching it or
goes
just
the wrong way.
yeah. There's
it's interesting
you got to pay attention to
because
his
he's not
dialogue
evil.
a lot.
He's not a bad person.
Yeah,
he's really not.
No,
that's why he's not a villain in my opinion. But then at the end, what he does is stab him in the back. Like, to me, even that's not evil. That's still just like human nature.
Yeah.
To spite someone.
Because
he's not going to murder
guy
anyone
throughout it. In these little moments, they show like with that guy and his daughter, and then like when he's just talking to the band as he's like, "This is your guys' moment. If you do this, you can."
Did you notice how differently he spoke to the professional band and the college kids? So the college kids, he like cusses at him and calls them whatever.
He's pretty much
the
like yelling a lot of
time.
time.
And then the pro band's like, "Hey, guys, okay, circle up. This is y'all's night. Go get him. Great job. Here we go." And that's like all he says. And I was like, "What?"
Like just a very pleasant guy. You're like, I could hang out with you.
Yeah, exactly.
I
well,
think
even the
that-
moment in the bar that he has with Andrew is really pleasant and nice. But what were you gonna say?
I think that was more to psych Andrew out.
You think
to make
so?
him not even
That's very possible.
I think that was all. I mean, yeah, I don't think he would have cussed out those other players, but just how he like flipped the script and was nice.
That's true.
I feel like that was
From
a
the
way
bar-
to
from the
get
bar scene
into
into
his
that
head.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that way at all.
Yeah.
From the bar scene on is when he starts being nice to him.
I loved his dialogue because he brings up all these, like pretty much every story that Fletcher brings up, it ends up happening in the story.
Yeah.
And so like the one where he said the guy that got a cymbal thrown at him and then he like left, he went home like cried and like practice, came back and played the best solo. That's basically what happened.
Yeah.
Is like Fletcher did him wrong, he got embarrassed, he left, he came back and did the best solo. So pretty much every like story that he told about a musician came to fruition, which
Well,
I thought
and
was cool.
Even the story he tells about the kid who died ends up being Andrew, right? Because he's the kid he found in the room practicing by himself, and everybody else thought he was a loser, and then he convinced him to come join his band, and then he joined, the bigger band, which we're left at the end of the movie to assume.
And they do a big long shot on Andrew as he's talking about that. And you're like, yep.
Yeah. So I thought his character was interesting. To me, I was sad for Andrew's character because he got overshadowed in his own movie, which
by the supporting character.
Yeah, but deservedly so. Like J.K. Simmons killed it. Like in his character,
but his character
is the heart of the movie. But I thought Andrew's character was not just as interesting, but I thought he was very interesting also.
Like he wasn't a perfect, like usually when in the movies they have like a perfect, like you maybe say like a hero or like the protagonist or whatever, but like Andrew had his flaws too. Like he was a jerk to Nicole, the girl. Like he had his problems at dinner with, which I assume was like his dad's brother, probably.
I would just say extended family,
extended family,
uncles and cousins or something.
Yeah. With the Division III football player.
That was weird. I wrote that down in my notes. I think plot or something, but I thought that scene seemed the most unnatural scene in the entire movie as far as like the natural progression of the film. Like that scene felt forced a little bit, which I loved it because it compared like how the average person values intelligence, or because what's his name is, or the politics kid, what's it called, the Model UN. He's like the intelligent kid, and then the quarterback is like football. Yeah. And so the average people, being his parent and his uncle and his aunt or whoever else is there, like those people value sports and intelligence over a musician. Yeah. Which I think was kind of a theme throughout the whole movie that got brought up.
See the stigma of being a musician is dying at like 34 of like drugs and everything, and like Andrew's like, no, there's like more to it. Like, what I'm doing is legit, like cool.
Yeah, and being a poor starving artist or whatever. Yeah, and then he even stands up for himself and says, "I'm like a world class drummer. Yeah, like I'm legit." And they're all like, "Oh, that's good for you," and then they just like move on and start talking about whatever. And I thought that was a really interesting scene. Like I think it was forced in the sense of like it didn't fit the natural progression of the movie, as far as like the actual plot goes. But the character part, like the character building in that scene, was awesome because it showed kind of the transition of his character being a pushover to, oh my gosh, I'm actually in this band. I'm a core member of this band.
Felt like he was kind of realizing at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that was a really solid scene for that purpose. And it served another purpose, in my opinion, of fleshing out that theme of like what the whole movie was about, which was music. Is equivalent to anything else.
Because there's obscure sport, like there's like hobbies that I have, or like stuff that I'm like you or I might be good in, that's just not, it's not football, it's not basketball, it's not this, it's not that, and people don't see that as value, but those things do have value. And I think that scene also showed for his dad, because his dad didn't believe. His dad was the one saying you're going to die at 34, drugs, blah blah blah, and you see at the end of the movie his dad's face when he sees his son up there doing that awesome solo, just how his face just is like in awe, like he's like, his dad's sitting there realizing like, oh my gosh, this is.
Do you think his dad's ever seen him play before? Like
probably
legit
not.
Play before?
Probably not.
Probably not. And so, like, your dad's more likely to go watch you play a football game than he is a band concert or whatever, right? Depending on who your dad is, I guess. But so I think that was really cool that they made that a part of the movie without being like overly political about it and overly like, this is what the message is behind the movie. You gotta believe it or else whatever. Like that was like an undertone in the movie, and I thought that was a really like nice way for them to do that throughout. I gave this section a 10 for character. I know the side characters were either not there or weak and not really that interesting, but those two dudes were awesome.
Absolutely.
They were awesome.
Killed it,
I thought they were great. What'd you guys think?
I gave it a 9.
Mainly
Mainly for the side characters.
Yeah.
And I mean, for honestly, for me to give anything a 10, it's got to be perfect.
Yeah.
But I don't disagree with what you're saying.
I'm with you. I think I honestly probably scored a little too high.
No, I think
I don't think so.
Like,
because of the side characters.
The side characters had their reasons to be there.
They were more there.
They helped develop the character of Andrew more.
Yeah.
But I do agree that they weren't fleshed out in a way that I would have liked maybe, and so I gave it a 9 because of that.
Right.
But they have a reason for being there.
Mm-hmm.
I
think the dad character for me was the most interesting side character, and then I think the drummer, who was the original drummer,
the original core
drummer. I thought his character was interesting, and they didn't really flesh that conflict out as much as I wish they would have.
I have like bad memory, or what was a condition where he's trying to come up with excuses to
Fletcher.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. So that's really all I have to say about character. You guys have anything else? Questions or?
No. I thought they were
spot on.
J.K. definitely deserves all the awards he got, and I mean, like you said, Miles Teller's character Andrew was definitely overshadowed by that such a great performance, but his character as well was really great. Really good. So I mean, it's all around good.
So for me, the plot's number 3 for us. Is the third section, but for me, the plot was really, really solid. Like the way it was built was really solid, but it was really simple. Like it literally just was this kid's journey from being not a bum, but being a freshman level average kid to
low guy on the totem pole to
ultimately being in JK's band. So to me, the plot was well built and well established, but it wasn't necessarily super like great. I don't know. I don't really know what was wrong with it, other than there wasn't really anything else going on besides the main story. Which that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, this was just another. Seems like the last 2 or 3 movies we've done have been this way, but it's not a bad thing either. Of like heavy character, but either lacking in plot or simple in plot or whatever, doesn't mean it's a bad movie.
No,
at all. I love this movie, and I mean, but I probably scored it a little low.
What'd you give it?
I gave it a 6, actually,
on plot.
But again, this is not a plot movie,
right?
So I feel like I scored it accordingly.
So I actually gave it a 9, and I'm not really sure why I wrote a 9 down.
It was very clean cut, like solid, basic plot.
That's what I'm saying. You can track the plot really well. You can see the development in the plot really well. There's a great plot twist at the end. You're not really sure where the movie's heading, and then yet at the end you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense, and I kind of like I'm glad that's the way they did it. And so to me, I think a 9's too high, but I wrote a 9 down. I'm gonna stick with it.
Do it, man.
What'd you give it?
I gave it an 8. So there's some parts in this movie that I totally get. Like this guy just seems Andrew's character just seems to have the worst luck. But then you sit there and it makes sense. Like the scene where he gets hit in the car and stuff. Like he's sitting there, he's going like 80, he's getting like running through all these stop signs and stuff. Like that's something that could definitely happen. There are like a couple coincidental things I think in this movie, like the bus's tire blowing.
Right.
And then like the folder getting stolen at the beginning.
Funny part about that scene, I thought, and they never say it, but I honestly wonder if J.K. Simmons didn't steal it.
That's what I figured.
I thought that's what was going to happen. I figured he was going to, at some point or other, like, maybe just like in a side scene, like shove it under, like throw it in a trash can or something. You know what I mean?
I just assumed that's what would happen.
Yeah.
I literally just assumed that's what happened.
That's what you got to do in that moment. It's just, so I mean, I gave it an 8. That's still high.
Yeah.
But those were the only parts I didn't like. I get the one I said first, like his luck running out kind of thing, like him like waking up late. Like, I mean, that's just part of his character. That's who he is. But no.
Well, it didn't even matter because Fletcher told him to be there at 6 a.m. for no reason.
Yeah.
No, he didn't. He just.
You don't think so?
No, what he did is Fletcher showed up at 6, and when he wasn't there, he left.
You think so?
I know so. Yeah. I had teachers that did that.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought
if you were late, they weren't there.
They just left.
Yep.
But then everyone showed up at 9.
So
like
for scheduled rehearsal.
The class started at 9, and so that's when Fletcher walked in.
Okay.
So I just assumed that he told him to do that, and that was just like his way of saying welcome to the club.
If he'd shown up at 6, they probably would have rehearsed till 9.
Okay.
Wow.
I would bet. Because I mean, and this is, I don't know if this is plot, kind of is a good point to talk about it. I mean, this movie really made me remember a lot of my only year in music school.
Yeah.
Because I didn't play drums, but similar situations of when you're a music major, you have an instructor for private lessons.
Yeah.
My instructor, not at this level, but was a complete jerk. And honestly turned me off to the whole idea of playing music for like that style.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the things just really made me remember like, oh yeah, the competitions and all that. Like, yeah, if you were unprepared, you weren't going to play.
This is all very true to
A lot of it was spot on
Yeah.
as far as that kind of stuff goes with the, I wasn't in the top jazz bands, but I definitely get the drive to want to be in the top jazz band. I wanted to have the best teacher that I really liked, but didn't end up getting him. So, it was really good, but yeah, so that's what I feel happened with that one scene is when he wasn't there at 6, J.K. Simmons left.
Yeah. So there's a few moments in this movie where they're sitting there talking about like measures and time and stuff.
Yeah.
And I heard you over there going like, "Holy crap," or something like that.
It's jazz, man. It's complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like a lot of the, for example, I remember I played Caravan, and jazz band. I don't think it was that fast, because when he said a quarter note is 3/10, that is fast.
Mm-hmm.
Most average songs, not necessarily jazz songs, average song is between 70 and 120, maybe 150 if it's a faster song. But for a quarter note to be 310 beats per minute is what that means. That's just crazy. But I do know jazz songs that are that way. The 4/8 thing, like, it's just, again, it's a jazz thing. You don't see it in everyday style of music.
Yeah.
So, but
see, I thought that was so fascinating because, like, it's clearly obvious that these songs are really fast.
Yeah.
That number stuff makes no sense to me whatsoever. But
Yeah.
like as a viewer of the movie, like it made sense.
Yeah,
and
for
like
sure.
it was like clearly that was the whole point of like,
Right.
that 45-minute part of the movie was
Yeah.
trying to get him to go play faster.
So, yeah,
I thought that was
this-
really cool.
I actually have a metronome on my phone. This is what 3/10 is.
Jeez.
That's insane.
Ugh.
Like, to play that on drums. And the other song, Whiplash, was, let's see, what was
That was the one with the 310 or the whatever swing.
the 4/8, and I think it was like 2:15. That sounds way slower than the other song, but that's still really fast.
Dang.
So,
That's insane.
Do you guys like that scene where there was the three, like they kept going round and round?
that
They
was
were
awesome.
there.
that was really cool.
That was awesome. I had several scenes that really stuck out for me in this movie. My favorite one, I don't know what my favorite one was. Honestly, it might have been the first time he walked into the classroom. And that one guy was sweating and crying, and he kicked him out of the class, and he turned to the other guy and said, "You know, it was you."
Oh, the out of tune person.
guy.
Yeah.
And then he walked over and said, "Let's give this guy a try." And that's when Andrew got on the drums, and then he like has the whole shouting match with Andrew, and he tells him that like, if you're just gonna cry, like just leave.
Not my tempo.
Not my tempo. And he keeps keeps messing up, and like that scene was awesome. So good.
Yeah.
I had a question on this section for you guys as far as the very end. So the climax, we can all agree, was awesome. The solo, the concert where he starts giving people cues and they all start joining in and they become friends again, whatever. Like, that was awesome. For me, the plot of this movie, the biggest weakness was the very, very end as far as, like, the resolution goes, because there really was no resolution. Like, there's no, like... And then he became... whatever.
I thought it was ended perfectly.
I would have liked to see one more scene of him a week in the future, a month in the future, 10 years in the future, doing whatever. Personally, just I like that bow on top of my stories, but I agree that the movie ended in a really, really cool way. It just felt like, I don't know, like it just felt like open-ended.
To me, it was like everything was good. Like J.K. Simmons realized that this is his guy. They're both kind of achieving their goals in that one thing. Like Andrew's sitting there like playing his heart out in that awesome solo. becoming like great and stuff, and then you have J.K. Simmons realizing that he has a legit student that he thinks he can lead to greatness. And so for me, I thought it was ended perfectly with both of them achieving their goals. I think ending right there was great.
I agree. I think if they had made this movie 30 minutes longer from that scene forward, it would have been too much.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been as strong. What I'm saying is like 10, 15, 30 seconds. That's all I want.
Yeah.
I
mean, I see what you're saying, I guess. But, like,
I
think for me the ending was, I wouldn't want to end it any other way.
The way it ended was really cool.
Yeah.
I agree. Like, the way they shot it and, like, the note ended and
I think it was all in that whole scene from however long, because Caravan's a long song. But the drum solo obviously was way longer. But it was all in the facial expressions, in the acting. When I saw J.K. Simmons actually crack a smile almost, I was like, all right, that's it. They can end the movie. And they did. Like, you know what I mean?
It was all implied.
That's some great acting, telling the story through their facial expressions
for
pretty
the last
much.
10 minutes,
and their body language. It was good.
Totally.
Yeah. I agree. I think it was cool to end the movie there because it tied back to the very first scene when he was playing in the basement by himself and he walks in the room, and so I thought that was cool that they tied it in that way. I agree with you guys.
I can see what you're saying.
I don't know. To me, like, the next day he could have dropped out and been a bum for the rest of his life. You know,
I doubt it.
No,
but it ended on a high point.
Obviously, he didn't. But like,
it's like ending Inception, man.
Yeah.
It's you have to kind of go for your own conclusion.
But see, Inception is different. Like, Inception
come on.
I think Inception is different. But okay. Anyway, okay. The fourth section is conflict, tension, urgency. The conflict in this movie was phenomenal. Like, so good.
I felt tension the entire time, too.
Internal conflict, personal conflict. Goodness, the tension the whole time was awesome. But there were certain scenes where it's just so intense. Like the scene when he's in his face and just like screaming at him is just like, oh my gosh.
Like, and you want Andrew to do good. You're like,
him
come on, man. Freaking do his tempo. Come on.
Yeah. Well, in that scene, they're there till midnight or 2 a.m. or whatever. And 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And gosh, like.
And they're just sitting there just having like a drum off pretty much. And Fletcher's just like yelling at him. It's funny because they go to that shot in the bathroom and the guy's like washing up and stuff. And you hear him yelling. And I love how
they finally finish and he's bleeding everywhere and he's done. He's like sweating and he's exhausted. And then J.K. Simmons walks over to the door and says, "Okay, we can start now."
I was like, oh my gosh.
Goodness. I love this section of the movie. I thought, for as simple as the plot was, I thought this section was awesome.
It was conflict heavy. It was tension heavy. It's like, even the scene where he's just sitting there talking to the girl in the pizza shop, it's like, they made you feel something like, oh my God, just freaking like talk to her.
Yeah, it was awkward and weird. And
like there's
first year college student.
Yeah, freshman, man. The only reason, so I gave it a 9 out of 10. I docked it a point for urgency. There was definitely urgency in certain moments of the movie, like the scenes where he's late, the scenes where he's running around, even the scenes whenever he's like in and out of the chair, in and out of the core. There was urgency there. I just docked it a point because there wasn't necessarily urgency throughout. As far
there wasn't
as
like an overarching
there
urgency.
wasn't a deadline. There wasn't a big concert coming up. There wasn't a 3 days from now this is happening.
It all happened in moments. I gave it a 10 because I felt something the entire movie. Whether it was either tension that they replaced with conflict or conflict that they replaced with tension, for me, it was constantly there. And so it really, that drove the movie for me. And again, that just goes to, a lot of it spurred from J.K. Simmons and his character, because he's the one that added all the tension for the most part, except for like Andrew being late or whatever. But still, you didn't want him to be late because Simmons or Fletcher gave him those deadlines. He gave him like when to be there and stuff. Like it was all stemmed from Fletcher.
Yeah, I agree. I think a 10 is. I mean, honestly, this movie probably deserves a 10. I'm with you. It was phenomenal. It was really, really well done. What'd you give it?
I gave it an 8. I mean, all the same reasons. I can't really add much to it. I just, again, like I said, I feel like I may have underscored this movie just a little bit, but everything you said I agree with. So
The cinematic elements for me was solid in some areas. It wasn't great in others. I don't really know. It wasn't my cup of tea as far as some of the things went. I loved the writing was so good.
Yeah.
The writing was so good. I might actually go home tonight and download the PDF of this script.
J.K.
and
Simmons lines, like the one where they step out at 4 a.m.
so
He's like,
good.
bring your travel tickets. Or don't, I don't care.
Yeah,
The delivery on that was
so good.
incredible.
Yeah, I'll probably download the PDF of this script because it was that good. It was really, really well done. The acting was phenomenal. I mean, both of those dudes, the way that they delivered their lines, the way that they handled themselves as far as emotionally in those scenes, their faces. I mean, what's his name? I don't know the actor's name. Andrew's character,
Miles Teller.
Miles Teller. The scenes where he's like bleeding and crying and screaming while he's playing the drums, like, come on, man! Like,
I'm upset.
So good,
Yeah.
so good. Yeah, he killed it. I mean, like I said, I think
The
J.K.
movie
Simmons
was
overshadowed him, but he was just
great,
he
yeah.
wasn't just as good, I guess, but he was almost just as good.
It was shot very well too. This was one of my favorite, like, cinematography wise, like, movies. Like the opening shot where it opens and they're at the end of the hallway and he's at the other end drumming. He's like partially covered and they start to like slowly
Well, and the
forward.
The sound is all muffled at first.
Yeah.
and it's clear as they go down the
And
hallway.
then like they had the shots were from these great angles, and so
I love the close-ups on the drum kit as he was
Yeah.
like hitting it in the dust
his
or the
face.
sweat and the.
Yep.
there's some shots from behind. There's one from below the cymbal where you see his face and he's sitting there like grunting. He's hitting it so hard and everything. And the scene where he's got all the blood on his hand, he puts it in the ice
water.
bucket, and it's from the sideways. Like for me, the cinematography was great. The acting was great. The writing was awesome. J.K. Simmons' character was hilarious. Like, sure, he was like a big meanie, and it's like I don't think it was written as a comedy movie or as a comedic character. That was just his character, and the way his dialogue was just. Sometimes it came off as just as like I know I heard you guys like laugh and stuff.
Yeah.
It was good.
I laughed out loud a couple times for sure.
Did you laugh because it was awkward or because it was funny? Because it was kind of like a couple times I was like, there
were a couple times he was so rude. He was so rude that I laughed a couple times.
Just like his comments on stuff.
I was literally like, "There's no way a human being would ever say that to another human being," which I'm sure that's not true.
I was gonna say,
but yeah, I was literally just like, "Gosh!" But the scene, the one liner that I laughed probably the hardest at was the line you already mentioned with the tickets or the travel receipts. He's like, "You guys bring your travel receipts," and he's like,
"Actually, I don't care."
First, he's like, "Yeah, I don't care." Like that was hilarious. Because like he doesn't care. I mean, it's not his money or whatever. So
right.
I thought he was funny. For me, the cinematic elements, I gave it an 8 out of 10. For those reasons, cinematography was awesome, writing was awesome, acting was awesome. The music was cool. That they had live, that they had over the top, that they had.
Well, then they
things
cut the
going on.
shots to the beats of the music, which was super cool. Yeah, and you could tell it felt. It made the movie feel jazzy somehow because they were adding it to the beats of the jazz music.
It was really cool. To me, I don't know if this is really fair, but I docked it a point or two just because like there weren't any stunts, there weren't any like CG. Which it's not that kind of movie. I totally get that, but for me, like, I can't give a movie a 10 out of 10 on cinematic elements for not having. I'm not going to necessarily dock it because it was boring. Like, it was a great movie, but I can't give it. I don't feel right giving it a 10 out of 10 if it doesn't have like that side of things going on. If that makes sense. That's not really fair, I guess, but that's how I feel. What'd you give it? 10
I gave it a 10 out of 10 because all the reasons I described. Because man, just like the things that they did have in there were so well done. And then they had the lights. The lighting was like this greenish yellow.
See, that was my question.
I didn't like the lighting. I forgot to bring it up.
And there's a couple scenes where it made him kind of look yellow, but then for the most part, I liked it.
I couldn't tell if it was intentional or not.
It was intentional.
I'm sure it was, but the ones in the movie theater were the ones that.
Those were Those were kind of a harsh yellow.
Yeah, those are pretty orangey.
When she was at which I mean that makes sense. Like I do photography for work and stuff, and sometimes that's when you're looking through the lens of the camera. You take a picture, you get back, and you have the lighting just is very yellow.
It's just the way it is.
Sometimes it's just the way it is. Like they might have ramped it up a little bit or something, but for me it felt decently true to probably what it actually is. They have some old bulbs in there that aren't, fluorescent.
Right. And see, like, I felt that especially in the kind of how the lighting was in the bar.
Yeah.
Like, that's essentially just with Moore. That's how he lit the studio classroom also.
Like a jazz.
Like a jazz club.
Yeah.
Which I thought was super awesome. And it just made it real warm lighting. And I think because with that, you can get some really cool shadows as well, like in the bar scene, like where like there's one scene where like half of his face was like completely, to really, it really, I didn't really think about it till just now. Like, it really foreshadowed how he was only being half-faced with him. He was.
That's true.
So that's one of the things that I often overlook is the lighting in the movie, how it's a lot of it's super, super intentional.
That's when they show it for sure.
Yeah. So it's a total score. What'd you give it on this section?
So I gave it a 7. And again, I probably scored it a little low, but I just was looking something up because I asked at the beginning of the movie, I said, did Miles Teller really learn to play drums? And I looked it up, and it made it really cool to me that, let me just read this little line.
Yeah.
To get the drumming right in Whiplash, writer-director Damien Chazelle, who himself is a drummer, had the novel idea to hire a real musician. Nate Lang, an actor and member of the New York band Howling Souls, played the core drummer from the studio band that Teller replaced. So
he was the guy.
He was the guy who was he did train him to do the like fake drumming and look, but like when it was like the playing the actual drums and the solos was that guy.
The guy that he replaced.
Yeah.
That's cool.
He was a pretty good actor.
He was, yeah.
He did a good job.
He had a couple big scenes, like he yelled at Andrew once. Like remember when he lost the binder and stuff? I was like, he had a lot more than just being,
He did a couple of good. Had a couple of really cool moments. He was a good actor.
But so I definitely, and especially in a music movie, I chalk that up to. I mean, yes, of course, I would prefer them to be able to learn and play everything themselves.
That's some pretty crazy drumming.
But yeah, there's no way any actor could learn to play drums like that for just a movie.
That last scene, like he honestly probably could have played Whiplash. He probably could have played a couple of those tracks.
Maybe. Yeah.
But that last 10 minutes,
totally,
it was insane.
And that's a long scene too. That last one, they're at that concert for a while.
Yeah.
They're up there for a bit because they have the whole part where he doesn't know the song. He doesn't have the papers for the song, and so he leaves and he comes back and they start playing the next song, and then he goes into his solo, and then they come back. They go down and they build back up, and it's like they have a lot of character development in that scene. They have a lot of stuff happens in that scene. It's like, honestly, you're like, man, like I'm having a good time just watching this guy just drum his heart out and watching the instructor. So I mean, that end scene was pretty phenomenal, I think.
Yeah,
I agree.
Totally.
That brings me to a total score of 44 out of 50, which is an 88 out of 100 and an 8.8 out of 10. It's honestly probably a little too high. We just watched it, so I'm a little biased, probably a little recency bias.
According to Rotten Tomatoes, 93.
I would say they were
Rotten
90s,
Tomatoes was super high, and Metacritic was really high too. So
yeah,
they had a 45. So was that like a 90?
90,
yeah. That feels about right.
I actually scored it really low. I gave it a 37, so that's a 77.
So,
but I honestly, the more we talked about it, the more I could definitely bump it up to 40s,
a low 40s
easily.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would judge my actual numbers on what I wrote down correctly.
No, that's cool, man.
Okay, so before we do meta questions, I have one question. It's kind of it's not necessarily a meta question. It's more of a comparison. But for me, I liked this movie more than Man from U.N.C.L.E., and I liked it more than Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, I figured Paul would disagree with that one. Did you like it more than Man from U.N.C.L.E.?
Yes. I definitely will buy this movie and probably watch it. Maybe not on the reg, but I'll watch it a few more times for sure.
And then, Luke, is this better than Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for you?
Golly, that's so hard. It's definitely better than The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I think The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I came down to it's not a great movie. It's not a bad movie. It's a very solid movie in the middle. It's a fun watch.
Yeah.
But when you think about just like how much of like a step up, just like everything takes in this movie.
Yeah.
Like I think it's so hard because I loved because both those movies are so
They're
character driven.
Yeah. That's where the root of my question basically is was DiCaprio as good as Simmons?
You know, I could argue that there were better characters in this movie than
Hollywood.
Once Upon a Time.
I think
but-
I'll pick this one over it just because of how short and how simple, like how concise it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously, like in my mind they're about the same, but like if I were to pick one to watch like on a Sunday afternoon or something, I'd probably watch this one
over the Hollywood.
Like I'd pick this one probably 51 out of 100 times.
Yeah.
I think this is a better movie for me personally, just because I liked it more.
Yeah.
Gosh, DiCaprio's so good in that Hollywood movie. So I don't know how much better, or if I'd say he's better than J.K. Simmons' performance. But to me, I think the characters in this film were better than the characters in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood combined. I'd probably say DiCaprio was the best of the four main characters.
Yeah, but as a whole.
I would say this movie's better.
That,
I'd say this movie's better
sense.
for sure, but I would say the characters are better in this movie slightly.
Okay. Yeah.
The combination of the two of them.
I don't have
together
any
was great.
problem with that. Like
Like
this, I could go either way, to be honest.
I thought that was a good comparison. Well, the more we were watching this movie, I kept thinking back to our discussion of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and that's where that question came from. So.
Yeah.
Okay, meta question time.
Yeah, so I have 3, and if you guys have some more, we'll obviously
have 0.
ask those. So this one should be pretty simple. J.K. Simmons' best role, if you've seen him in many other movies.
Spider-Man.
I was about to say he's
1.
so good as Spider-Man.
J. Jonah Jameson.
I love him as J. Jonah Jameson, but
I think this is his best acting.
It's no question.
This is his best
performance I've ever seen.
The only one
I've only ever seen those movies with him in it, I think.
He was also in another. He played a really good role in Patriots Day. That's all about the Boston Marathon bombing, and he's a cop. Plays a really good role in that movie too. But I would say this is his.
He's
best
in a really
movie.
sad movie, isn't he? That came out.
Oh, he's in a
recently?
bunch of other movies.
I thought there was a movie that came out pretty
Let me
recently.
see here.
He was in
pretty
Justice League where he
sad.
played Commissioner Gordon for a little bit.
Oh yeah, he did, huh? Let me see here. On IMDb, his top 4 movies are, if my computer will load. Come on.
He was so good in this movie.
His top one is Whiplash.
Yeah, he was so good.
Is Juno, La La Land, and then Spider-Man. So that's interesting that he was in another movie with this Damien director,
La La
which is
Land.
cool.
Yeah.
That might be what I'm thinking.
He's
of.
also the State Farm, one of the State Farm guys.
Farmers.
Farmers.
Yeah.
We are farmers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would 100% say this is his best role.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. So this is more a little bit less like about the movie than more of. Have you ever had a teacher similar, maybe not like the cussing and everything, but that drove you that hard as this guy did, whether it be any grade, college or under?
I had a professor in college who this guy reminded me of him, but nowhere near this ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I was definitely thinking of that professor whenever, like the first scene whenever J.K. Simmons walks in the classroom.
Yeah.
I immediately thought of this professor.
Yeah, I had one too.
He was my philosophy professor, and he cussed. He would cuss in class, which I don't know how professional that is. But I definitely thought of that guy. But he was nowhere near this level.
I must have lucked out because all mine were just sweethearts.
Yeah, I actually had another music teacher that was instilled fear.
Yeah.
Just like this guy does.
No, this my professor would walk in the room and the room would go dead quiet, and he would just pace and wait to talk, and you were like,
yeah.
So yeah, I definitely thought of that guy.
All right, so my last meta question is, was it too much? And I'm just saying in general. I'm not saying whether it be the language or the harshness or whatever. I'm just saying, was he too, if you want to say mean, was he too harsh was he too much of a jerk?
Well, so that's a great question because they actually asked that question in the movie. He says, I do what I do because I'm trying to get greatness out of people. And then Andrew's character looks at him and says, but where's the line?
I actually wrote this down before that. But
He
totally.
says,
they actually address
So they actually address that in the movie, and they never give an answer. He says, no, there's no line because what's-his-face wouldn't quit.
Right.
The real
Yeah.
what's his face wouldn't quit,
Well,
and that's
and-
just kind of the way the argument's left.
And since Andrew did the exact same thing, you kind of are led to say, I still think it's a kind of, was he though? You know, like.
Well, so, goodness, I don't know. I would say that there has to be a line. There has to be. And he has to have crossed it, in my opinion. But you can't argue with the results.
Right.
So then the question becomes, does the end justify the means kind of
Yeah.
thing? It comes back to that argument.
Yep.
And to me, the answer is no. Like, some ends aren't worth the means it takes to get there.
Yeah. I mean, he was definitely harsh. I mean, I don't think it was too much just because that was his character. He was just like, I mean, that says that way in the description. His the way of teaching was just extreme. Like, it was to the extreme.
Yeah.
And that's just part of his character. And like they said, it's part of the story as well. They bring it up and they address that. Because like Andrew believes everything he says. Fletcher believes like everything that apparently he's heard. Like, you know, that's just how it is. Like, apparently he sees the guy that threw a symbol at whatever his Charlie Parker's head. He sees him as someone to idolize. He sees that as a teaching method that works. And so that for me, that's just, you know, that's part of his character. Like, I could see where you think like that could be too much, like probably too, I don't know, but I could see where people like probably just a regular moviegoer goes in and is like, oh my gosh, that guy was so intense. He did not need to do those things.
Right.
But like
all the moms were like, no.
Yeah, since we're like sitting here breaking it down and everything, it's like I think it is just it's who he is.
Yeah.
And since they address it, it's clearly meant to be like that. It's meant to be part of his character. They do show that he's a decent guy when he's around, when he's not like teaching.
See, that was
people.
the most interesting part, was the scene with the little girl.
Yeah.
The scene with him in the bar, like all these nice-ish moments.
Mm-hmm.
But like, he wasn't a bad person.
No.
Right.
And he walked that line so well. In real life, I would say, like he for sure crossed the line.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no one needs to be treated that poorly to get that.
I would not be surprised if there are teachers like that.
No, I'm not either.
There.
I'm not either. What I'm saying is, just because you feel like you're justified in doing what you're doing to get what you want doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do. And there's a huge difference between like being a jerk to someone and like pushing them in the right direction. But I totally agree with you guys. For the movie's sake, he was perfect. He was the perfect balance of mentor, father figure, anti-hero, villain almost.
Mm-hmm.
But then in the end, he was still like the idol. He was literally like the opinion and the perspective that Andrew valued the most. And
so do you think his way of teaching, do you think he was truly passionate that he wanted all those kids to achieve greatness, or do you think he was selfish and wanting to have that great student?
I think he was selfish.
I think it's a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more he wanted to have that great student, but at the same time, I mean, even though he didn't have that great student in that first kid who killed himself, I mean, playing for Wynton Marsalis, who we talked about, that's a super high achievement. So I don't feel like that scene was mostly manipulation. I feel like that was his true emotion. He was sad that he lost a great student.
I think he was.
So I think it's
sad
a little bit of both.
Yeah, I could see
I think
that.
he pushes everyone to greatness for their sake, while simultaneously always looking for that one kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
And once he finds them, clearly, what's he do? He gets everybody else, pushes them all away, and just says, you guys keep playing. I'm going to look on this guy. I'm going to focus on this guy.
Mm-hmm.
All of his attention immediately goes to Andrew.
Because he has such a passion for jazz in general, like wanting it to be like perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then,
Well, it was interesting that he played the piano. I thought that was an interesting touch.
That was
he
cool.
wasn't like jamming on the drums, or he wasn't like, playing the sax or whatever. Like,
that's
they
what he
picked the
talks to that
piano.
little
was
girl
interesting.
about. Like,
the piano.
Right.
yeah,
That was an interesting touch that he was like playing that. And that song
Such
that he was
an
playing
elegant-
was slow and kind of romantic.
It's a
little bit.
contrast to his character.
Yeah,
How his
that was
character through the
interesting.
movie, how the piano's such a soft, like mellow instrument. He's just like a rage machine.
Yeah.
All right, AJ, what are your
you
meta
got
questions?
anything?
Top 25 movie of all time.
I mean, you already know it's in mine.
I know it's in your list. What's it at? 15?
It was like
in
14, 15.
Yeah.
It was right there, smack dab in the middle.
For me, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say it's not in that level. Gosh, but it's close, dude. It's probably like in the 30s or 40s. I mean, it's up there for me. Like, yeah, that was a really stinking good movie. Yeah, I wouldn't put it in my top 25, but it's close. Like, if we made a top 50, it'd be in there. It'd be in my top 50 for sure. So if we had to go with our tiers that we talk about all the time, like tier 1 is like top 25, top 50. This, for me, is a tier 1 movie.
Mm-hmm.
Own it, watch it once every 2 to 3 years. Maybe more often than that, probably. Paul, what would you say, tier 2 probably for you?
No, I would probably say it's a tier 1.
Top 50-ish, own it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
watch it
I
once in a
probably
while.
could bump something out of my top 25 and put this in there.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's the best, and I know we talked about this, but you guys hadn't seen many. This is the best, in my opinion, movie about music.
So this was my next meta question was best music-related movie, ?
Yeah.
And for me, it's a yes.
Throw some other ones out there real quick just to give some examples.
School of Rock.
Yeah. So
Paul probably knows
what I think of, and a lot of others. There hasn't really been a whole lot of fictional music movies. Yes, there have been, but not other ones that automatically come to mind. But I think of movies like Ray, about Ray Charles's life, Walk the Line, Bohemian Rhapsody, the new Rocket Man movie.
Yesterday.
Yesterday. I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's good.
Heard it's really
I want to see it because I'm a big Beatles fan. But this is the first movie that I can think of that has been on the actually about music school movie.
From that perspective.
And I loved it.
Yeah, for me, it's the best movie about music I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's honestly not even that close. Like Paul said, I've probably only seen 2 or 3 movies that are even like about music.
Yeah.
But I loved it. Like, I don't know jack squat about music, and I loved this movie. I thought it was really, really great.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm assuming you would say it's the best.
I'd say it's the same. Like, I've seen Bohemian Rhapsody and like all those other ones, and like for me, like those all have flaws. To where this one, to me, I didn't have like barely any flaws with it. Like those, like the other ones, you can just kind of watch and enjoy, and they usually have the soundtrack of the band, like they have the old Queen soundtrack or whatever, and so you're enjoying those moments. But this one really just like it was carried. This one felt like very true to the music, very true to it felt just very true in everything it did. And so I think for sure this is probably the best music movie.
Yeah, I definitely would. In my opinion, it would.
That's awesome. Yeah, I agree. That's all I got. I enjoyed this movie a lot. I think I liked it more than I thought I was going to. So that was fun. It was a fun experience to watch it, knowing that you liked it a lot and still being skeptical, and then actually really liking it.
I figured you'd be pretty skeptical. I was curious how you would like it because I know you're a musician, and so like I was curious to hear like how everything was in that aspect, and I figured you would be skeptical.
I just don't like those kinds of movies in general. I don't like movies that are pure drama with few characters and simple plot lines. I just traditionally don't like those type of I don't know what genre they are. I guess just drama, but like I don't traditionally like those kinds of movies. And this one was great. I thought it was really, really well done. So
for sure,
I got nothing but good things to say about it.
All right, well,
if you haven't watched Whiplash, I don't know why you're still listening, I guess, but check it out. Super great movie. Next week we're gonna do
The Matrix.
Matrix #1.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which comes to the theater in.
It comes in late August, so we can. It's for its 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
So we can either just watch it like how we do, or we can go see it in the theater because it's coming back in the theater, but it's at the end of the month, and that's in like 2-3 weeks. So I mean, if we want to wait that long, like we definitely can. But I'm just up for. I'm gonna buy it, of course, and so I'll buy
Paul
what you
probably
just
already
Paul,
got it.
you own it.
Totally.
So like.
Stay tuned to actually see what we do on our next episode.
Yeah,
we don't know yet.
We're for sure going to do Matrix, whether we watch it in the theater or not. We'll to be determined. But if you had never seen Matrix like me, go ahead and watch Matrix #1 before the next episode. That's what we're going to talk about next.
Yep.
So,
All right.
super pumped for that.
Yep. Well, thanks for listening, guys. That was a great episode. A lot of good discussion. So, again, check out Whiplash, and thanks for listening. yelling into my mic. So.
Well, we're still figuring it out. This is only the third time we've done it with this setup.
Yeah.
I did start listening to the Stranger Things episode in the car, and I was like, oh man, this sounds so much better already.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I do agree that the audio level was a little loud on that last one.
I was like wearing my beats in my office. Also, I was just welcome to
I mean,
Welcome to episode 17 of 270. I'm here today with AJ and Paul.
Did you say Webkins?
Webkins to.
I haven't heard that word in
Welcome to a second episode of Webkins on Us.
a hot minute.
I'm AJ and I have for you recording.
That's whenever
okay.
you guys are ready.
Oh,
movies.
what should we talk about?
All right, so
Yeah, count in your head this time.
okay, countdown. In 3, 2.